All right, all right, all right, all right. Okay. So, seems to be a problem with Facebook integration currently. Probably they blocked me for, I don't know, reasons. Yes, so super exciting news. What are we talking about today? There has been a new version of the Neon 3 API layer, right? That's the stuff that you call with API.v1. And originally, I thought that there would be breaking changes, but it turned out that there are none, which is excellent news. That's why the endpoint and everything just stays exactly the same, so you can upgrade without doing anything. But let's actually have a look at it and see what are the newest things. So what I'm going to do is kind of like introduce the new capabilities of the API while also building like kind of like a demo app, and then gradually go over to how should I say that? Where's my standard mode here? There we go. But we'll gradually go over to actually creating a real API out of a little click dummy here. So why am I choosing this approach in the first place? Well, because I want to introduce this as a very fast solution to kind of like quickly whip up an API if you're like, for example, mainly a front-end developer and or a back-end developer that kind of like quickly needs to get something out to the front end so they can do their stuff while you then kind of like hash it out in the background. So I created a new project, Rapid API. Actually, now I kind of like regret that decision because I know that's confusing, because there is a Rapid API service out there. Probably should have chosen a different name, but that's okay. You can, of course, name the project whatever you want to. That's not the point here. And on the right side, rather than working with an interface today, right, so a user interface, we're going to work with Postman and basically, pretend that, I mean, it's an API only thing today. So what I'm going to do, I am going to start like I always would with the Neon 3 new app and basically install that. So note that so what also happened meanwhile is that the CLI tool switched over to a pure PHP solution without any kind of dependencies. So I would recommend switching over. The node-based CLI tool is still working and will actually receive one last update, but that update will also mark it as deprecated. For now, it's still okay because there are actually still a little, some things missing in the PHP-based version, but it makes things easier. There's really not so much you need to install anymore. If you can run PHP, then you're good. I mean, at the end of the day, Neon 3 is a PHP framework, so why would you need anything else, right? So PHP Composer, that's it. You can use Docker, you can use whatever you want, but that's the only stuff you actually need. Okay, so what should have happened now, and is it created the project itself. So let's quickly see whether or not that is true. So I am kind of leaving the demo frame for us as is, right? And then we have the demo component. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to simply create a very classical API endpoint, right? So I'm going to run my Neon 3 new component. So and then I'm just going to call this test. So what I can do, or actually let's do this the regular way, right? So I'm going to choose API component. Which frame do you want to use? Yeah, I only have that one, so just enter, and then we're good. So in my components, I have now this test, and we're going to send a regular GET request over to this URL, which I probably should run the server somehow. All right, so 3 develop. Okay, that's running. So let's get that going. So here we have HTTP localhost hold on, 8080 API.v1/test, right? That's all I should need. And if I run this, actually let's do key equals value, send over, send a request, and I can basically see it's coming in, and here I have my key value. Okay, so that's already it. I didn't touch anything, right? So other than the CLI command, I have not done anything at all to make this endpoint available. Now let's look at this a little bit closer. Okay, so what the CLI tool generates is basically the class itself, right? The test class that extends the demo, which in that case is the frame, which I encourage you to not use the demo frame, but it's a different story. And then we have the old kind of routing, right? Where you say, okay, so if there is a get, right, in front of the name itself, so then get is interpreted as the method, and then test is just because, we're in the test class, I can't call this get, otherwise, or post, I'm going to get conflict here. And then we intake the parameters, and in that case, there's nothing we do, we simply return them back, right? That's a little bit of a PHP 7.4 marked up. So one of the things that you will notice is that we kind of dropped PHP 7.2. So there's nothing in the core that would require you to run 7.4, but everything that gets generated and so on basically uses a lot of stuff that is available from not even in 7.3, like actually 7.4. 7.2 is basically hitting end of life in a couple of months, so there's really not that much reason to keep that going. Okay, so as you can see, we basically defined the parameters, and that didn't really change that much. Now, what also didn't change much is that the whether or not something is optional or not is basically something I can define directly in default values. So if, for example, I do not send over any kind of this in here, right, then what I get is a request is empty, right? So why do I get that? Well, for very obvious reasons. I have not defined this as optional. So it automatically adheres to that, and now I see I get a 400 status error back, bad request. So this does not fulfill the minimum requirement of that request. If I want to say, hey, you can or cannot send something over, then let's just give this something here, right? And as you can see, it's going to return empty now, right? Because, well, there's nothing for me to return, and I just declared this as an array if it's not set. So far, so good. Now here comes the interesting stuff, right? So what a lot of people have said is kind of like, okay, yeah, that's all pretty cool. I mean, let's actually just play this through for the post body here. So it's just to see what we're doing here. So let's just return body, nothing else here, and same thing is true here, right? So if I say, hey, this is actually a post, and in that case I send it, it's going to give me the request is empty. And then I say, okay, let's go to the body. Not sure what that is doing here. That's raw JSON. Probably a better way to do this with Postman, but. And then I say test works and go. And then as you can see, now it's understood as a. Oh, why is this? Why does it say that one? That's valid. Oh, because I say JavaScript. I wanted to say JSON. Okay. Right. So that works just fine. And so I can basically get the payload if because a post request, of course, rather than having parameters, uses a payload. But here comes the thing now. So if you have a couple of endpoints, right, then things become kind of messy, and there is, of course, the legitimate request to say, hey, a lot of the APIs that we're building have a very different format. So for example, let's construct something here. Let's go to the other one and say, hey, let's create another API endpoint. So neon3, new component, I'm going to call it users. And because I want to skip the questions, what I'm going to say is T for type is API. I'm going to say, oops, F for frame is demo. And then, as you can see, it doesn't ask me any kind of questions. It just exists. Let's see if that's true. So let's go back to our get. And let's say users. Right? And F should, of course, right? And I get this as expected. So what we do want to do sometimes, though, right? If you look at users, let's check this one. So the test we don't need anymore. Let's get rid of test. Let's have a look at users. Okay, so let's look at the get, for example. So what I sometimes want to have is something where I say, well, so I would like to have something that, for example, says users, I don't know, 12 as a get request. Okay, and so what you normally would need to do is to somehow define that those are separate routes. And so there are, you know, ways out of it where you say, okay, there's user and then there's users and, you know, all those kind of things. And what we do now is to basically say, hey, so let's just say that is optional, right, to not interfere with it. And say, what if I were to just say, hey, you know what, there's also an ID, right? And then I say, hey, let's just add that to it so we can see it. So it gets returned, and that is then just add that to the return object. Okay. In that case, the return object is, let's say it's also there, right? Some value. Okay. And do we have that on get? I have to get rid of the body here. To get rid of the body here. Okay. All right. Now I basically see here's the output, sorry. That, okay, so the D12 was added, basically. I put that right here and said, okay, there you go. This is now something I can call. Now, the trick is, right, that, well, so, but what if I don't set it now anymore? If I say, okay, so I defined that it needs this, so if I send this now, it should get me an error, right? And you can also see that, missing argument ID. And that's actually how smart it is. So it basically, with a refactor class, we understand what kind of parameter needs to be put in here. And if I say that is not necessary, then, you know, I can, of course, simply set a default value again and say, well, you know what, just set that to null. And actually, I don't know why this is screaming. Argument PHP docs. Okay, sure. And if I do it then, right, then, I mean, of course, in that case, I'm going to get my null here. But I can send this perfectly fine, right, and say, okay, this is basically what's happening. And that allows me, I can go deeper here, right? So I could, for example, here say, I don't know what, right, auth or whatever. And can therefore basically generate my whole different kinds of routes in one definition. And how convenient that is basically something that I want to show you, because it's a very different kind of routing that you're probably used to. So let's just assume a regular scenario. Okay, so what's a regular scenario? A regular scenario is that you would generate a user, right? You would generate a user for registration purposes. Okay, so let's do that. So let's see how this would actually look like. So in a post users, right? This could be an update. This could be all kinds of things. So what I want to do is I want to kind of know if that's auth. And I'm going to kind of like only say, hey, you know what? I probably want to work with this. And let me get kind of like get this one done here so it doesn't scream here. Come on. Yeah, just put it there. Okay. My ID is really picky. And then basically say, okay, so if what? Well, So if auth, right, then, well, then I want to log in, right? And if not, whoops, then I want to register. Okay, so far so good. So how does registration work? Well, in order to basically facilitate that, the easiest way, what we're going to do is we're going to take like some kind of a fake database. That's one of the, actually let me go here and say composer require, and then we're going to say neon3 apps / file away. Hope that's correct. Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's look how this kind of works, right? So first, and I can actually do this right here. I can basically say, hey, we're going to call this DB, and that is a new file. Whoops. Is that not how it's called? Oh, it's still indexing. Okay. Need to wait for this to happen. Hold, give me a second here. It's busy today. Okay, let's try it again. Oops, new file away. Okay. The reason why I'm waiting for that is because I'm so super lazy and I don't want to write the import, the use myself, right? See how it's, my ID just puts it in here. And then here, so what I'm going to put here is the location of where I'm going to store this. So what you would normally want to do, right, is to store this outside of the web root, but we want to look at it right now. So I'm going to actually be so bold and put that in frame demo and call it storage.json. Okay. So that's basically the location of my database right now. Again, don't do that in production. And then what I can do is, and actually let's get one more package in, and then, or actually let's get two more packages in because I know we need them. So composer require. So what I want to do, of course, is to say eventually neon3 apps / stateless. Eventually I want to have a JSON Web Token authentication. So let's get that one going. All right. And then what I also want to have is ops, so I can make a couple of encryption stuff happening for me. And okay. And by the way, don't worry, I'm going to put all of this in a Git repo at the end of the day, and you can simply use it. Okie dokie. So, okay, so let's assume we're hitting the register. So again, if it's not auth, so we're just posting to users and get a body. And so what we want to do here is to basically say, okay, and I can actually do this right here too, and say, let's initiate this. So DB and set entity, so that's how I call my documents, and I call this users. Okay, call this users, and I'm basically good here. And then so here, if I'm in the register, what I want to do is I want to generate a pseudo ID basically, right? And say, okay, so my ID is some kind of random string, let's say 18 characters long. And then if that happened, what I want to do is to say, and actually let me get this to this even easier. What I then want to say is to say, hey, the body password. Oh, whoops. The body password. And oops, sorry, long day. And then the body password is something. So I'm going to send this over, right? So just to be clear what we're going to do here. So let's say post, and then I say, okay, users, get rid of this stuff. And what we plan to do is to say, okay, so you register a user, and we're going to have a username that's going to be test user, and we're going to have a password that is going to be 123456. Okay, and this password I want to kind of like encrypt, as that is not something. So I say encrypt, and what I do in order to make that secure is to say, hey, I'm going to receive the body password and I'm going to encrypt it with itself. Right? So as a general security advice, if you hash passwords, you're okay, right? But we can't do that with this fake DB. But if you use any kind of encryption, like don't use any kind of you know, static that you have on you know, in your env file or whatever. That's not secure, because eventually if I somehow can get to the key to encrypt stuff, to decrypt stuff that's in your database, it's a problem, right? So that should not be possible. So I'm going to want to do it in a way that, well, without having this password, you can simply not crack this password. And so if I'm done here, what I'm going to do is the following. So I basically added an ID to the body that I receive. I encrypted the password, and that's how I want to store it, right? So what I'm going to do is to say, okay, db add, and it's just simply going to drop in body here, right? And what I want to do at the same point is to directly write it to the file. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. And then it gets better. Now I'm going to actually generate a token at the same time. So I'm going to say, okay, stateless assign. Well, let's get that done. So I'm going to call this token. And so I want to have some kind of identifier that, so I can read this identifier later on. So it would make sense if that's something that actually, you know, like in my backend is somewhat relevant. So I'm going to simply use that ID that I generated as the identifier. And as the scope, let's just do something like that. And then a payload, I don't need a payload, right? Okay, that's all that. And if I have that, then we are going to basically say, okay, so return, oh, sorry about that, return, and then we say, okay, of course we want to have the user, and that's going to be our body, and then we want to have the token, and that's going to be, you guessed it, our token. Now there's one thing that we should consider before we do this here, right? The way we're kind of like faking all of this is we probably don't want the encrypted password, you know, going out back to the client. Okay, so after this save action here, what I'm going to do is to make sure that that's gone. Password, right? That it's simply gone. Okay. So far, so good. Let's give it a shot. So I expect this to simply just run, but we're also going blind. I didn't write test or anything, so let's keep our fingers crossed and shoot this over. And already we see a couple of problems with that. So warning, unlink. Oh, yeah, because that is wrong. That's unset. That makes more sense. Okay, and that's the only problem. No secret key defined. Right. There's another problem here. Okay, so let's quickly go to our frame. And let's start by saying like, hey, and I basically need a, let's do that private string secret, And I can actually directly set that. No, I can't set that directly. Yeah, no, I can set that directly. So I'm going to simply be wild here. And what I'm going to do with this is the following, because I don't want to write this every time here. So I'm going to create a construct, right, that basically says, I mean, first of all, make sure that it doesn't override the construct. And then I want to say stateless set secret, this secret. Okay. So what I do need is any kind of like any kind of secret, and let's actually do this a little bit more complicated here, to encrypt the JSON Web Token with, right? Shouldn't forget about that. And if we have that set up, then I mean, of course, now, and it's actually something that we might want to look at. See, we already, so the insertion has already worked, right? So let's just see how that looks like. Right, so we already have this. So we now have users, and here our username, then our hash password here, and this ID. Right, so that exists. What I'm going to do for now, right, because we kind of want to debug this, is I'm actually simply going to get rid of that, right, and pretend that we don't have a user yet. Okay, so again, so here in the else, we don't send an auth, and then that means that, okay, there's a random string. And we get, we encrypt the password, we save it to our file, we then unset the password, we create the JSON Web Token, and then we return the user and the token back to the client. Let's see if that works. All right, and there we go. Right, that's our result. So that's our test user with the ID that we got. I mean, take a unique ID in real life scenario, but you know, you get the point. And this is our token, right? So the first thing that we probably want to do is to see, well, you know, like, does this token work? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of like just duplicate this. Yeah, duplicate tab. Right. And here and in the get user, what I'm going to do, let's for now get rid of everything here. Get users. And what I'm going to do here is to say that's now going to be a restricted endpoint, right? We're not going to restrict it to a particular scope. We're simply going to say, nope, if you're not logged in, you can't see this. And if you can, but if you can, right? So let's do that and say, okay, so, oh, we haven't defined that. We haven't defined that. That's something we want to move away quickly. I want to move away quickly. Yeah, I'm already tired of it. Let's put that in the construct. Let's put that in the construct. Yep, let's get the file away going. Let's get the file away going, and of course here we need a public, and actually in that case we need to protect it. DB. Okay, and then here we have this DB. And this is a file away. Okay. I like how typed PHP can be nowadays. Pretty awesome. Reminds me of Java a lot. Okay, so now we've got that out of the realm. So that basically means that we can throw this away, right? Instead, we can say this DB and this DB. Okay, got that going for us, and here we don't need to set it up either. We can simply say this DB, and then here in that case we want to, what do we want to do actually? Find, right? We want to kind of find all. Yeah. Yeah, and then actually we can do a little bit of a thingy here where we say we're going to protect data somehow. So as user, and then let's just say we're going to return users. Okay, and again, this is just a file system, you know, it's not smart. I'm using it like a database here. And here I'm going to simply say user, or same thing here, right? And say unset user. Now be careful here, right? So what we have going on here is user's now an object. So unset user password. And after we did that, let's push it to users. Okay, and then return users. Okay, so let's just say that was our endpoint for getting out all users. So let's do that, and let's just make sure that I don't have an authentication header automatically. Yeah, no, that looks fine. Okay. I don't know if Postman, if it receives a token, does it automatically, because I don't want that to happen right now. What I do want to say is, okay, now let's get users and see what we get, right? So I click send here, and as you can see, I get a 401 unauthorized, right? I'm not authorized, so which makes sense. So ideally now, of course, so I kind of fake this, right? What your front-end application would normally do is to say like, okay, so in the register process or in the login process, you received this token, right? Let's copy this token and create a bearer token. No idea what that crap is. Place that in here. And then do it again. Oh, damn it. That's the post. That was so not what I wanted. Yeah, that was so not what I wanted. I wanted to place the token here. Sorry about that. I'm not sure if that's the same one. Is that the same one? Yeah, it's the same one. Okay. And test it here. And then ironically now, with me not being careful, oh, uncut domain exception, mail format. What's malform JSON? Why, what do we have here? This is a GET request. What are you even talking about? Oh, yeah. Right. Wait, where does this happen in the JWT? So we sent over. Hold on, did I make a copy and paste issue now? Probably did, and now I have a new token. Very painful here. Let's make sure that that's the kind of stuff, right? When you're getting tired. Okay, let's see. See if we have the right kind of stuff here. So that is a bearer token, right? We should receive that. Send that over. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So let's see what the problem is with this token. Did we return that the wrong way? No, we didn't. That should all be fine. That should all be fine. Of course. Well, type property file away entity must not be accessed before initialization. Oh, it's a completely different issue here. Yeah. Okay, so that's still something we need to do, right? Actually, in that case, we can even say, because we only need it here. Let's place it right there. All right. Yeah, there we go. So again, unfortunately, I posted now 2 test users. But as you can see, we now basically have the capability to say, okay, so we have a restricted route, right, that requires our token, and we have the registration going on. So in our post, right, we kind of like completely missed the login. And that's maybe something that will get us to the point of like, why do we even want to do it on this level? Or isn't it smarter to create a model that does that? And the answer is, of course, yes, of course it's smarter to create a model. So let's clear here. And say, or actually, let's write the logic first, even though it's a little bit of an odd back and forth, but just so you see what's going on here and how the logic will work. Oh no, let's create the model right away. So Union3, new model user. Okay, so I should have a user model now in my models. Let's open that up and see what's going on. Okay, so the model is something that, what I actually want to do here. Yeah, I want to move my whole DB interaction right into here. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So let me actually do the following. Let me clean up all the clutter here and create a private static, and then it's file away, and then I'm going to call this store. Okay. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to say, we're going to make the super magic here. Static function call static. Yep. Where we're ultimately going to say self, return self method. Oh, hold on. A little trick here. I'm going to say call equals, whoops, method, name, sure. Actually want to call this method, right? Makes so much more sense. And then here we say call, and then spread operator arguments. Okay, that's what we want to do. Because I want to force this to run first before our functions that we're going to write are actually called. Because why? So why is the good question, right? Because, well, okay, now I need to initialize this. So I'm going to say self store equals new file away. And here is my, whatever that was, path frame. What do you call it? Storage? Oh, well, demo storage, right? Or JSON, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And then what is always true here is that self store set entity for the users model is always going to be users. Okay. So why is now the question, right? Actually, let me quickly see if that is even true. What did we call this? Storage JSON. Yes, that's fine. Well, so we kind of like want to lift the login away from the controller, right? So we're going to say static function login user. Okay, and here's the interesting point. So if I were to do that, then login would be executed, and after that the call static would be executed, right? So the trick that I'm gonna basically do here is to say, okay, how do I turn this around? I mean, this is just how PHP works, right? And that's exactly what I've done here. And I said like, well, what if it could not be found, right? So if I'm calling login from the outside, it will not be found. The call static will run, and then the call static runs our login. And so it's a little bit of a, well, yeah, I mean, how I don't even know how to call that, right? The trick 17 here. If there's any Germans here, they will know what I mean. Okay, and then so the first thing that we want to do here, right, is to kind of like get the password out of the way. I'll tell you in a second why. So let's capture the password. We need that. And so we say user equals self store find one. And then in that case, I gotta be careful with the password. So just username. So let's get the user out first. And that is username. Okay. Now, this user now can be found or cannot be found, right? So let's just say, okay, if not user, then throw new route exception, and we're not going to tell anybody anything about this, right? So what I mean by that is like we're not going to say like that user didn't exist, to not give any kind of hints here. We just say like, well, if the login doesn't work, then the login doesn't work, right? Something's wrong. Then we say unset user password, and then we're going to return the user, just like we did with the register. Now here comes the thing now. Okay, so we can't just get out a user by username without verifying the password, right? I agree. So we get it out here anyway, and what we're going to do then is, and then we can do that in one step, and say or, and that's why I stored the password away. So not password equals. Wait, is that? Sorry. No, or not. Yeah, no, I'm correct. Sorry, getting confused with that. And then here I'm going to have my ops decrypt. And now I say user password with password. Okay. Now, follow me here. So remember how we stored the password by encrypting the password with itself. So the other way around is like, okay, so that means that the encrypted password, right, which is this, can be decrypted with the password itself, so what the user, pretends, and must come to the same result as the password itself. Okay, so if that's the case, we're good. If not, then not. I mean, this will normally simply not decrypt anything anyway, but I mean, just to be sure that even if it gets out some gibberish, that it still must be like, yeah, and it also must be the same. I mean, mathematically almost impossible, but let's account for it. So that's basically now our secure login, and then let's do the same with static function, and let's move in our register in here. User. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And what's wrong here? Oh, you're just missing this. And here we basically say, and this is something that I want to prevent because it happened to us already. Okay, so let's here quickly do a unique check, right? And say, well, this username doesn't really work. Okay, so if not empty, so basically what I want to know is if I search for this, and actually, well, what I quickly want to do in between here is I want to create a find as well. Shouldn't have any kind of database. Sorry about that. Have any kind of database interactions outside of this. So here I'm going to simply say, okay, return self store find, just find, yeah, and then condition, which of course is something I kind of need to put in here, and should probably say you can be all. Okay. Yep. Okay, and then again, you can type that nicely to make sure it works. Okay, and then here I can then say, okay, self find, and then username, username. Okay. Then, so that means that you're trying to register as a user that already exists. So in that case, we're going to say nope. Right? Kind of the same thing here. Throw a new route exception. And in that case, I want to say username already taken. So we put in a 400 bad request. Okay. Otherwise, let's get the stuff in that we already did, right? So let's get a random string here as our ID, and then say, oops, sorry about that, and then say self store add, and then let's create our user here. So username is username, and password is, and then remember that one too, ops encrypt, and then we say user password encrypt it with user password. Okay, and so we have that, and actually what I want to do more or less is the first one, because of course this will not order anything, is my user ID. Right, okay. So far so good, and then I'm done here, and of course I'm going to return user. Yeah, actually, and I want to do the unset of user password directly in here. Yeah. Let me see if I've done that up here too. Yeah, okay. Okay. So far so good. Now, let's go back to our controller and throw everything away. Okay, look, let's throw everything away, including this, and also including this. So what we can do now, right, is to say, all right, so either it's an auth, right, so it tries to authenticate with username and password, or it tries to register with username and password. Right, so what we can now say is like, okay, user, if auth, then user model. All right, I don't recognize that now. Yeah, so that's a magic method, and if I want this to actually show up in my IDE, what I'm gonna do is I quickly have to register that. So login user and register user. Can I type this? I can. All right. And what else have we created? Oh yeah, and find array condition. Oops. This is so fascinating. Okay, see, and now non-static method login. Did I really static function login? Oh, no, I need to tell it that. Static all right, that looks better. Login user. Right, yeah, or register user. Oh, and we, sorry, we're gonna call it body, of course. Okay, and then So that would either work or throw an error. And then let's create our token again, where we say, okay, stateless assign user. I could have left that there, I know. ID. Read. I don't even know why I'm doing this right now. I'm not checking for anything on that level. Right. And then also stay the same here and say return token is token, and user is user. Okay. And so now basically I have all of the endpoints in here, right? So let's try them all out. So post users, right? So I posted again. I have, it actually doesn't matter whether or not I have the token here or not. My body is test user. So ideally this is now basically throwing an error and telling me that user already exists. Let's give it a shot. Yes, username already taken. Fair enough. So let's say test user 2. Go. Fair enough. I'm not even going to bother storing that token, because what I'm going to do instead is say, okay, I'm going to log in with those credentials right here now. So if I were to say, okay, auth, bum, ooh, then it's not working. Then I get an error unauthorized. Okay, let's see what the issue is. Storage. So our database, so to speak. Oh, the test user 2 did not register. Our test user 2 did not register. So why is that? Where's our issue? So so if it is auth, so now it's true. So it logs in, else, yeah. Username test user. Okay. Well. Let's figure that one out. Okay. So let's go back to the register function and say test user 2 shoot you over here. Right? And this works so far as that the register takes it and there is no issue, but here we never get to this point, which means something is wrong in our register function. Yeah. All right, got it. Don't even need a debugger for that one. Let's do it like this. Bum. Okay, now we get the token. Let's see if that's true. Yeah, that already looks better. Here's a test user 2. Okay, cool. Now let's log in with those credentials and see if that works. Boom. Oops. Gonna use object string classes array and user model on line 33. User model line 33. User model line 33. Right. 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 Oh, if I actually don't want to. What I kind of wonder is if I shouldn't prevent myself from going down that rabbit hole. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Yeah. I guess I don't want to do that. No. You know what I'm going to do instead? Because I will never get used to that. I'm working with associative arrays. Okay. All right, so far so good. So now my login works, right? Let's go back to my user. So that means if I go to get all users, same here. So here I'm going to say that's restricted. So I'm logged in now with as test user 2. Let's make sure that that's the case. And then we basically are done with this kind of little demo here. So if I logged in with this. So if I am now taking this token that I generated, right? And why do I keep doing this? I wanted to go to get users, and when I use it over here. Okay, so here what I want to do is to basically say, hey, those are your results. Results, right? And what I am going to do as well is to say request user, and then I say JWT JSON token identifier, which should give me now the ID of the user. And this DB, okay, that I also don't want anymore because it's not nice. Instead, I want to say user model find. Okay. All right, now let's fire it up. Okay, cool. So here are my results. Those 3 users here, and it's been requested by this user here, which you can see is our test user 2. See that? There we go. Let's make an error in our JSON web token. I'm going to add a 3 here, send it again, boom, unauthorized. All right, so far so good. And that's basically enough for the boilerplate. I mean, we could clean up here a little bit. And for example, say, hey, we don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. That is something we're going to do in the model itself. And then we're done. And now we can simply create, a bunch of endpoints based on that logic, right? So let's just, as a little wrapper up, let's see how we can basically use this, right? So I'm going to say, okay, so neon3, new component, and I'm going to say private endpoint. Actually, let me show you that in a little bit. Private endpoint. And then I'm going to say type is API. I'm going to say frame, oops, it's a flag. Frame is, oh yeah, still demo, unfortunately. Should have created a new frame. Okay. Private endpoint, let's see where we have that. That's right here. And the only thing that I'm interested in here is to say that's a get, that's protected. And I don't need the params, but what I want is the count. Okay, let's add that to docs. That to count, and then I simply say, all right, actually I can do that. I say stateless restrict, and then I say users is just very quickly here, right? User model find, right? And what I'm then going to do is to say users. Yep. And that, oops, what am I doing here? Then let's just say that's the amount of records we're going to show, right? And then so it's just a simple for. We're going to say I equals 0, smaller account. Users is oh, sorry, I cannot call this users and users. Let's call this all. All I. Okay. And then we're going to return users. Okay. And let's default this to 1. And see how it behaves. So I should have, if I now simply duplicate that, and hopefully, let's make that one bigger. Hopefully that takes the authorization over. Okay. So now I can say, all right, private endpoint, go. Oops, online 28. We actually have an issue here. Online 28. Oh, yeah, indeed. Let's create a regular 4 here, I guess. Oh. What? Did I send it or not? Okay. Unauthorized. Wonderful. So it is not the right header. Let's see. So this thing here. Oh, because we still have the 3 here. Yes. That was, of course, something that you inherited with it. Sure. Okay. Okay, and then we see, okay, now we get 1, and now let's say 3. All right. And now I get 3 users out. Yeah, I think that's kind of enough. So what I'm going to do is I know that this was a little bit confusing, right? The way we jumped around here, but the idea is basically to show you how easily you can set up and use the API, and of course, like doing it the right way. Then like you immediately like all of a sudden are in that rabbit hole of creating models and setting up private properties and all of that kind of stuff. But I think that you kind of saw how easy it is to basically generate something like that. I'm going to upload this as a boilerplate, but a project to look at on GitHub, and then later put it in wherever, so platforms on YouTube and all the stuff where this video appears in the, well, below the video, right? Or you know what, let's do that right now. Do that right now, so all the people in Periscope and so on can also basically check this out. So there's no README, of course, so let's quickly do that one, maybe. README. Let's quickly do that one and say, okay. And 3 PHP API demo. All right. All right. I say quick and dirty API scaffolding as a result of, and Twitch .tv /neon3, and then HTTP is, of course, to watch. All right. Got it. Share project in GitHub. Should probably not call this Rapid API. Call it Neon 3. Well, I can also not call it Express, right? Gonna call it demo API. Fuck it. All right. Okay. Yeah, that I don't want. That's all fine. That's all fine. That's all fine. That's all fine. That also, that not. And that's all fine. All right. All right, then let me post it in the chat. All right. Cool. Thanks for watching, and I see you guys around. Hope I have a little bit more time in the future to do these kind of things, and we'll see, I guess. Right, so until then, you guys enjoy, and I see you